All right, here we go. We got a primetime showdown to take command of the NFC East. So let's take a look at just how the Eagles can take advantage of a couple commie weaknesses. Plus, Jayden Daniels has been really good, especially when it comes to targeting Terry McLaurin. But what did Vic Fangio have to say about it, and why might Philly have the kryptonite for that connection? Also, Quinn is planning on limiting Saquon Barkley. Yet as we know, that's more difficult than it sounds. However, it's the mismatch for A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith that Washington might not have a plan for, so let's talk about it. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? It's game day, baby. So how about dropping a like because the Eagles are back at the link? Meaning the doubters are about to get answers to questions like, is this team overhyped? Can they slow down a good offensive team? And ultimately, do they have what it takes to win the division?
Why would you doubt that?
You're right, I wouldn't based on several different factors, which I'll get to in a second. However, it's amazing the number of individuals who continue to doubt Jalen Hurts.
I know it sounds crazy with a rookie quarterback against Hurts. I actually trust the Commanders more than I trust the Eagles at this point in the season.
But I think Daniel, as a quarterback, I would trust Daniels more than Hurts at this point.
That's the first time I've heard that. You know why? You said I can't.
Look, I realize Jalen ended up with 2 turnovers against Dallas last week, but heck, the dude was literally staring straight into the sun, and plus, he hadn't turned the football over at all in the 4 games before that. So this whole narrative of he's just a turnover waiting to happen is a little bit much.
That was an overreaction.
Yeah, it is, which is why I would not bet against him to have a good game tonight. And neither is Underdog, since right now, all new customers can get a free Jalen Hurts pick when you scan the QR code and use my code PHILLYSPECIAL at sign-up. I mean, it just makes too much sense. Because not only are they the official sponsor of the channel, but with the birds and commies and bright lights, you knew they'd be offering a special Philly special pick. As always, when you sign up with my code, you can get up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So don't miss out on the crazy promos, discounts, and insane payouts you could be taking advantage of. Especially since there's a play this week that I'm psyched out of my mind about.
You know, it's one of those ideas where you're just like, yeah!
Okay, here we go. This week, I'm taking Saquon Barkley over 79.5 rushing yards, Brian Robinson 1 touchdown scored, Jake Elliott over 2.5 field goals made because Philly should be able to get into the end zone quite a bit, and then Quinyon Mitchell finally gets his first INT of the season. Like, come on, not bad for a 22 times multiplier. Plus, knowing the added emphasis of Terry McLaurin lining up against Q more often than not, the Rook's definitely going to have a chance to make some of those plays.
Yeah.
So you think interceptions are coming?
Yeah, they gonna come. Yeah, when they come, they gonna come.
I will say that I did consider going with Zack Baun over on tackles because obviously he's a beast, but I'm going to stick with Q. Who knows, maybe that'll be a mistake because Big Bang Baun was recently named as the NFC East Defensive Player of the Week for his performance against Dallas. Leaving just one thing to be said. Get it done, Howie.
Pay that man his money.
Now, if you want your best chance at getting paid, then check out the best option in fantasy sports. Scan my QR code, use code PHILLYSPECIAL, or just use the link in the description and you can get up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Anyway, back to the game. Ultimately, this one's going to come down to one main area, stopping the run. Because even as great as Jayden Daniels has been, the passing game hasn't been able to capitalize on passing touchdowns nearly as much. Since Washington has the highest percentage of touchdowns on the ground in the NFL, and considering that the weather forecast is shaping up to be upper 30s at kickoff, this one's going to be a cold, tough, physical NFC East battle. It's just unfortunate for the commies because they really struggle to limit the run and slow that down, which is, not playing into a cold weather game. For real, they rank near the bottom of the league, and to make matters worse for the football team, once opponents get into the red zone, it's a pretty good bet that you'll see a touchdown, since Washington ranks 30th in the league when it comes to forcing field goals. However, when it comes to who the Washington defense will focus on limiting, head coach Quinn has Saquon front and center.
He's an incredible player. I think the combination, where he can take somebody's leverage and try to work outside because he has the speed to go and then the ability to spin or to change leverage. And so that, to me, is a factor in itself, the ability to start and stop, with that explosive nature that he has and try to break somebody's leverage. So the tackling, the angles, you want to make sure that point is really hammered home over and over.
He's not wrong. It's just that that's much easier said than done. Heck, how many times have we seen or heard teams say, we're going to shut down Saquon Barkley, or he's a key focus, only for Superman to wind up making him look silly. Plus, more bad news for Washington. The last 3 opponents don't run the ball anywhere near as well as Philly. And yet we saw Chicago rush 33 times for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns, the Giants run 31 times for 164 yards and 1 touchdown, and the Steelers reach 140 and 1 score. Albeit fine, they did limit Pittsburgh to only 3.3 yards per carry. The double-edged sword to that, though, is that then that opens up the passing game, since newly traded for cornerback Marshawn Lattimore was officially ruled out for the game tonight, meaning A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are about to get either Benjamin St. Juste or rookie Mike Sanderstill, which creates all sorts of mismatches for Philly. For example, for one, BSJ can get really grabby and doesn't have the best speed. So I agree with Jimmy Kempski that if the Birds decide to take a deep shot, it will probably be with a receiver opposite of 25. But secondly, the other option in Sanderstill should be a mismatch because honestly, the second-year corner would ideally be playing in the slot. Except the absolute bust that is Emmanuel Forbes has created those problems. By the way, he did claim recently on Twitter that he's ready more than ever now. Although, bro, we got those clips from last year, and yeah, A.J. Brown broke you.
Pull yourself together, man.
Sorry, but there's just no way he wants round 2 with Swole Batman. Of course, on the other side of the ball, as great as Jayden Daniels is, the hope is the Eagles have his kryptonite in Jalen Carter. After all, the Redman's no stranger to embarrassing JD or his offensive line. Yet look, to be fair, what the Rook is doing in Washington in Kliff Kingsbury's offense is absolutely impressive. I mean, right now, Washington leads the NFL in points per drive, and actually the splits on the road get even better. Granted, Philly's defense has been the best at stopping teams in that same category since their bye week, so kind of an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. However, as Shane Haff pointed out, even with Jayden Daniels having the monster season he has come back down to earth over the past 5 weeks, ranking 15th in terms of overall effectiveness and efficiency as a passer. Now I know, even as I say that, it doesn't mean a lot obviously because of his dual threat ability and especially what he can do with his legs. But make no mistake, Vic Fangio is not overlooking that.
He's done a great job for them. Kudos to him for what he's been able to achieve. Kudos to the coaches there that are coaching him. Because that's not an easy offense to run. They do a lot of different things. And, he's only thrown 2 interceptions, which is, unreal, really. So he's done a great job. He's a really good player, highly talented. I think they're running an offense that he's very comfortable in. And he's got a lot of good players around him. And I think it's an accumulation of all that. We got to be assignment sound. Make sure we always have a guy available to play that quarterback if he pulls it. He'll pull it sometimes with blockers. He'll pull it sometimes with, just himself there if you overplay the run. You got to be assignment sound.
Honestly, the more that I think about it, this is going to be a game where you could definitely see a lot more of Nolan Smith. Hear me out. With Daniels' constant threat and ability to take off and run, why not use one of your most athletic players, maybe if it's in a spy situation or just containing on the edge? Heck, Nolan Smith has 4.3 speed for a reason. Plus, despite my guy primarily being used as a speed rusher, that actually plays into the matchup with his O-line. Because even if Andrew Wiley comes back at right tackle, he's clearly shown a tendency to get beat by speed. But be that as it may, honestly, the scariest matchup is probably Terry McLaurin. I mean, if there was ever such a thing as an Eagle killer in the NFC East, it'd probably be Scary Terry. For real, the Commies' #1 target has 58 catches for 847 yards and 4 touchdowns in 10 career games against the Birds. And the most impressive part is that he was doing that with some really subpar quarterbacks and offenses. At the same time, the difference is this year's Eagles don't have the weakness they did in the secondary, considering anyone entering Guantanamo Bay doesn't typically fare well. Although according to Next Gen Stats, it's actually Cooper DeJean who's allowed the fewest yards per catch when targeted. Like, not that I'm petty, but it would be pretty cool to stick it to the Commies for the pick that they helped us get in Cooper DeJean.
I think it's going to backfire on you.
Sorry, the bigger news is that the Eagles officially activated Jordan Mailata from the IR, meaning the left tackle is back. And continuing with more good news, it looks like Philly should have a complete full bill of health for tonight's action. Granted, I will say that it shouldn't go overlooked that the Eagles actually held all walkthrough practices this week, and not a single full practice. So hopefully that doesn't end up having a negative effect and that it actually pays dividends. Speaking of, shout out to Underdog because we're back with one more in-game prediction contest. So here you go. Take some time, think about who it's going to be, who is the first touchdown scorer in this game. You could say an Eagles player, you could say a Commanders player, but come on. If you pick the correct player, then you will automatically be entered into a chance to win any NFL jersey of your choice. Of course, I should also mention that the Eagles do have to win, but then if that happens, I will spin between the winners during my Friday night live stream to pick one person to win any NFL jersey of their choice. So, as always, good luck to you, and thanks to Underdog. Also, just another reminder, but since I'm going to be at the game tailgating and cheering on the Birds, Thomas and I won't have the live stream this week. But feel free to show up and say hi, as we'll most likely be at the 4th and John tailgate. And I'm just going to say it, I can't wait. A night game at the Link, the atmosphere is going to be electric. Of course, with this game tonight being so hype, I figured it's time to go behind enemy lines. Which is why I caught up with Commanders Take Command host Craig Hoffman for all the latest info around Washington.
It's really surprising just from the outside looking in. I think a lot of the NFL landscape feels this way, but the Commanders this season, I mean, the turnaround with a rookie quarterback, a lot of the shakeup internally. I think most everyone knows the Dan Snyder situation, but like is it that big of a surprise for someone, following closely with the team? I mean, how big is this thing really?
As big as it possibly could be. I mean, it's year one with a rookie quarterback. This is not how this is supposed to go. I can't tell you how many times on my radio show in the draft process, I was like, look, I like Daniels. I think he's going to be pretty good. After they drafted him and you saw some of the OTAs and mini camps, you're like, man, this kid's pretty sharp. Like I think long term, they got the right guy. They turned over more of their roster than anyone in the NFL. They have a rookie quarterback. And I would be like, look, don't count on the CJ Stroud rookie year, because CJ's rookie year was unprecedented. Everyone's like, number 2 pick, he can do it. It's like, probably not. I didn't say definitely not. Good thing I didn't say definitely not, because I was wrong. He's been better than Stroud was last year. So many of the key additions have been outstanding. And I think the biggest thing is the coaching staff has been the biggest surprise. I mean, I was a big fan of Dan Quinn. The more I learned about him, how he also went about his business after things went sideways for him in Atlanta. But a guy like Kliff Kingsbury, I had a ton of question marks about. He's been arguably the best offensive coordinator in the league. So the way that they've put this thing together, maximize what is still an under-talented roster, which might very well show itself this week against the Eagles, who is an over-talented roster. Schematically, they're maximizing in a way that's really fantastic, and has been a lot of fun to cover and watch.
Well, you mentioned that, and we're definitely going to get into the Eagles matchup, obviously. But I do have to ask, because, you talk about maximizing that roster, and especially on the offensive level. Like, I see all these stats and numbers. I mean, shout out to Warren Sharp. I saw some of the stats and info of where they're at this point in the season compared to, I don't know, the last 20 seasons or 25 seasons. They're like right there at the very top. And so you're like, okay, hey, that says a lot, obviously, for the Kliff Kingsbury, for Jayden Daniels, the way that they're able to maximize this. But when you talk about, I guess let's start last week, Steelers, a little bit of a bump in the road there, losing by a point. What happened? Just for people that maybe didn't watch as closely, again, you being right with the team, but the good, the bad, the ugly, what happened there?
First, a very key question. Are you legally required to shout out Warren Sharp because you both share the same facial hair?
Well, I kind of got a little bit of inspiration there. So not legally, but yes, we try to go with the...
morally speaking,
right,
you were required
there you
to.
go.
Okay, now that that's out of the way and covered. It's funny because that Pittsburgh game is a 1-point game, and I don't want to read too much into it in that way, because let's say Zach Ertz gets credited with the first down on that 4th and 9, controversial spot, definitely a bad spot, whether it was a first down or not, more up to debate. But let's say they give it to him and they go down and they kick a 50-yard field goal and walk off for the win. Okay, well, 2 plays have changed, but did the rest of the game change? Did the performance change? No. They put up 27 points against a very good Pittsburgh defense. There's some weird, fluky special team stuff that happens in that game. Down in, down out, it was definitely their toughest game offensively. Pittsburgh is so disciplined, and they have so much team speed that they were able to do some things with Jayden and how they rushed that limited him as a run threat, which is something that no other team has done to that success level this year. I mean, 3 carries for 5 yards, I think, were the final number. And this is a guy that's, pushed 70, 80 yards in a couple games this year. So the design quarterback runs, the lack of scrambles. Terry McLaurin still had an outstanding day. Just smoked Joey Porter Jr. left, right, and sideways. Their running game really took a hit. They were missing their starting right tackle, Andrew Wiley, who's not like a world beater, but very, very good run blocker. And his replacement was not actually the backup. It's the 4th string tackle, because their third string tackle, it was out as well. So you're talking about a 4th string tackle trying to pass protect and run block against TJ Watt, and it mattered a lot in that game. So if they can get Wiley back, and of course, the guy running the ball was not their number 1 guy either. Brian Robinson missed that game. So if they can get Robinson and Wiley back, I think that changes the dynamic completely for them offensively. Again, Philly's super talented, but in the Pittsburgh game, I think that talent gap you saw at times, the lack of timing, the lack of punch that Trent Scott had in the run game mattered a lot. And then, Jayden he felt sped up for the first time all year. That Pittsburgh defense is so fast. They're so physical. They got good pressure in smart ways. And he was just throwing fastballs all over the place. And sometimes he needed a little bit more touch, and some opportunities get left on the field that he'd been hitting previously. And that's how you lose by 1 point to a good team.
Imagine that, a 4th string tackle is not able to handle TJ Watt. I don't know. Maybe that plays a little bit of
might
factor,
have had some relevancy in a 1-point football game.
Perhaps, just a little bit. I'm hopeful, of course, obviously, that Philly can take advantage of some of those things. But before we get into a little bit of that aspect, you do mention naturally, players making a huge difference. I want to just ask you quickly, because there's certainly, hey, the X's and O's, the players, the ability on the field, but also just the culture, the aura in Washington is definitely different. How big of a difference has it been, and what is the, I guess the elephant in the room with the Dan Snyder, but the biggest driving force behind the change now of the new regime?
It's definitely starts from ownership down, because it's not just that they have a new GM and a new coach that are completely different types of people than anyone they've had recently, but they also have, like player care or family care for players. And so there's just like an ease around, hey, my family's taken care of. That's nice. I don't have to worry about them during games. Even, it's one thing to do some of the stuff that they provide outside of the stadium, but even on game day, just like my family's taken care of. They're doing a good job. So there's that. There is way more staff to help players. So medical is better. Strength conditioning is better. The analytics side, they used to have one of the thinnest analytics departments in the league. Now they have all kinds of dudes, because that's, as many Philly fans know, although the reputation up there is a little bit different with the Sixers. That's how Josh Harris rolls. So Josh has hired a ton of really smart people. They have this guy, Dave Gardy, that was in the league office forever, like helping to write the rule book. He's their rules guy. So like on Fridays, they have situational meetings, and Gardy's up there running a meeting with the whole team, being like, hey, this situation happened in the whatever game last week. We should be aware of it. Here's like a funny kind of rule application. If we get in this situation, here's how you handle it. And so he's helping with those types of things. He's helping Dan with timeout management and challenges. And it just, every detail is so buttoned up, as opposed to the vibes culture that used to exist, and the vibes were always terrible. You have really, really smart scouts. Adam Peters has seemingly gotten a transformative draft class where he has drafted not only his quarterback of the future, but potentially his left tackle of the future in the 3rd round. Sainristil, the second, is a player. Johnny Newton is really coming along in the 2nd round. He's a player. Ben Sinnott, I think, has got a longer road in terms of development, but is doing some good things right now. Luke McCaffrey, like, we keep kind of joking, those film nerds of the Washington football community are like, there's going to be a day where he has 6 catches for 100 yards because he's open all the time, and Jayden just is looking other places, or when he does look there, there's like a little bit of pressure and the throws off, but like he's coming along really well. So there's just, between the scouting, and then Dan is a culture, like it's a culture of competition. And so everything is always trying to be improved upon. There's an incredibly high standard. Jayden is the right guy in terms of the locker room to lead that from a player standpoint. So it's just a cohesiveness and a togetherness at all levels of the organization where everyone is moving in the right direction. And it's worked so far, in part because they haven't faced a ton of adversity. And I'm curious how they handle it if they do. If they lose this game, it's their first back-to-back losses of the season. How do they handle that? We'll see. But I think they're very well equipped to, because their processes are really good. They're dedicated to just doing the same things week in and week out, and that's producing a lot of results.
You mentioned very well equipped, and certainly, like you say, the playmakers, the culture of competition that we see. For people that are watching this, Eagles fans interested obviously in this matchup, but again, we look at some areas of strengths for this Washington team. In particular, and you've kind of alluded to or mentioned a couple of those already, but for this matchup in particular, can you give me one or maybe in a couple of the biggest strengths that you think Washington matching up with Philly for this Thursday night matchup?
It's hard. Like, they're going to have to play together as a team and have a lot of like really smart schematic stuff, which is extra hard on a short week. Because, like, man for man, I don't like a lot of the matchups for Washington. So not every Philly fan's favorite Washington analyst, because I'm just going to be like, I don't know. We just recorded our take command this morning, and Logan and I, after we got done recording, my co-host Logan Paulson, who played 10 years in the league, and we're like, are we going to get murdered this week? Like, the way the Eagles are playing right now in the matchups. But like, Washington does present, I think, one thing that I think Kliff does really well, Kliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator, is he uses formations about as well as anyone in the league. And one thing that Vic Fangio does defensively is he will match formations. And so can Kliff trick Vic Fangio, one of the godfathers of modern NFL defense, into some looks and some personnel groupings that favor Washington? Can you get Jordan Davis off the field because you're just going to run a ton of 11 personnel, and maybe that you're running out of some lighter looks? The thing is, the Eagles are kind of used to that. They have the second highest percent in the league of light boxes used. So they know how to defend the run in light boxes, but can you formation it up to where the box is extra light, and maybe Cooper DeJean who's played really well and physically against the run, is like in a bad split, and he's got a tougher thing. So like there are little things that you can do to try to kind of pull guys here, push guys there, get the personnel that you want, and create the best matchups possible. The thing is, this Eagles team is so talented that even those are not great matchups. And so I do think that like Quinyon Mitchell versus Terry McLaurin is a really interesting one. Quinyon's been incredible this year, especially as of late, since the bye specifically. They're playing a lot more press man. I saw a next gen stat that the NFL put out. Like he was playing press man on 2.1% of snaps in the first 4 weeks. Since the bye, it's 34%. But Terry is literally the best press man receiver in the league this season in terms of receptions over expected. So that's a really like, do I like Terry in that matchup? Yes, because I like Terry in basically every matchup. I would say the same thing, by the way, about AJ Brown on the other side, but we'll get there. And so can it like literally comes down to who makes plays and offensively. Defensively, the thing I like about Philly is Jalen will eventually turn the football over. That is who he has been. And so if Washington can stay patient and not give up explosives and make Philly hit 12, 13 play drives consistently, I think they can generate the turnovers and bend but don't break to give themselves a chance. The problem is like not giving up explosives to the Eagles is extremely difficult because all of their dudes are capable of going to the house at all times, and you can play things pretty well, and then Saquon makes a move and two dudes run into each other and it's Keystone Cops, and now you've given up a 65-yard touchdown.
I love that analogy.
Did you see
see? And
that
he's
play?
He's gonna go with the reverse hurdle over something like, you know,
maybe, or like there was literally a play. I put this on Twitter because I laughed so hard when I was watching the film this morning, studying up for the podcast that we do. And there's a play last week, I think it's in the first or second quarter, where Jalen swings the ball to Saquon in the flat. And Saquon splits the two Cowboys linebackers. And Marshawn Overshown goes face mask first into his teammate's chest plate. Boom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that dude just made two NFL linebackers run into each other like they are children.
Yeah.
What are we doing? He's so nasty.
He's ridiculous. It's a normal occurrence. I mean, the thing that I love the most and I get the best kick out of is the fact that like John Mara hasn't been able to sleep in months, and Joe Shane is sitting there going like, whew, man, somehow I got to justify this somehow, but it's absolutely not going to happen because for a guy that, you know, they claimed was, running back, you know, and you see all the Hard Knocks things, which you can argue, does that make him look better or worse? But still, like you see Saquon go to a division rival of all teams and do what he's doing. It's like, absolutely. We're very happy about that, obviously.
Here's what I'll say about Joe Shane. Joe Shane knew Saquon wasn't going to help his team win football games. And at that point, like he makes the right decision. Joe Shane never would have been like, oh, no, he's going to be terrible on the Eagles. They didn't let him go because he was terrible. It's because, like, you know, the running back is the thing that completes the Sunday. The Giants have no ice cream. They don't even have a bowl. So why are you spending money on a cherry if you don't have a bowl?
And they chose not to go and get ice cream even in this to continue this analogy of an O-lineman, you know, to help with anything there or draft a quarterback, which, you know, anyway, that's a whole other. They've got way too many weaknesses. But the segue here for the Commanders, because you mentioned out a lot of strengths and everything else there. Is there one biggest weakness that you can give me Commanders-wise that the Eagles can capitalize on, should capitalize on, something there?
I mean, I think that you have to try to capitalize on this secondary. You know, it's been a rough week for those of us that try to say like, hey, Benjamin St. Juste is an average football player. Because he has a tendency to, the phrase I've started to use is he has like a negative clutch gene. And so in big situations, teams go after him and bad things happen, even though on 90% of snaps, he's their best corner. And it doesn't look like Marshawn Lattimore is going to play. Like the Commanders know they need another corner. That's why they traded for Marshawn Lattimore. The problem is Marshawn Lattimore's hamstring is not ready to play NFL football. And so until then, like, can Philly find ways to take advantage? Can you get in good down and distances to where Washington is willing to play a little bit of man coverage? And then can you burn them on the outside with that? I think they're going to play a ton of cover 2 looks, a lot of soft zone, and like just try to keep everything in front of them. That's what I would do. But Joe Whitt Jr. wants to be more aggressive. He wants to play man to man. That is who they are at their core, him and Dan Quinn. So can you force them to be a little bit impatient? And then, you know, obviously, can you can you generate some explosives in the run game? Can you find ways to get Frankie Louvu or Bobby Wagner out of a gap and get Saquon in space and let Saquon be Saquon? If you try to just run straight at this team, they found some ways in recent weeks to be a lot more solid as a run defense, but they have given up some big ones this year. So can you find those looks in the run game? And just, again, like the overwhelming amount of talent for Philadelphia, like it's much less for, I think, the Eagles about scheme as it is to try to just find the right matchup and then take advantage of it. And that, of course, that starts with holding on to the football. So that gets to the hurts of it all, where can you not throw picks? Can you not fumble? Can you not lose the possessions? Because if you just can simply get the ball to your playmakers, you have the advantage.
I've been saying for a long time, because, you got this whole debate of like, is Jalen Hurts elite? Does he need to be elite? And to your point of like all the playmakers that they have, it's like he just needs to be good. He needs to be a good quarterback, distribute the football, and not turn the football over, which, he had an issue. Then coming out of the bye week, he'd gone 4 straight games without any turnovers. And then we saw it kind of rear its ugly head against Dallas. Thankfully, no issues, 34-6 win. But I'm with you on that, because if he does not turn the football over, then they're obviously a lot more dangerous. You do mention, the playmakers, the weapons. All Philly fans thank Adam Peters for the trade that got them Cooper DeJean. I will say that. However, there's trades back and forth that both sides have won, quote unquote, won, as we've seen so far. I mean, Jahan Dotson coming over to Philly in a roundabout way. Adam Peters able to turn that into a Marshawn Lattimore like you see. So I'm going to be a little upset that Lattimore may not be playing in this one, but hopefully, in the future one in Washington, we'll get to see that matchup. What can you tell us about injury updates? You ran through a couple of those, but as of right now, and again, just for full transparency, as of 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday is for this injury update. But as of right now, what can you tell us?
Yeah, I would say on the Adam Peters, trade front too, just quickly, like the Cooper DeJean trade worked for both sides. Like in that trade is also like Mike Sainristil and Ben Sinnott. And, there's a lot of stuff that came out, I think, well for both sides on that one. The Jahan Dotson trade. That was a win for me because I got some amazing phone calls that we continue to use on the radio show of people killing Adam Peters for letting go of Jahan Dotson. And it's just one of the funniest things we've ever done on the radio. As for the 10:30 a.m. injury update, Brian Robinson told reporters yesterday he is going to play. He has also said that in previous weeks where they ultimately do not let him play because they are very much like player first. We're not going to let you go unless you're actually healthy, which is also team first in the long run because they don't want Brian Robinson to go out there with a hamstring injury, re-injure it, and then miss another month. Like if you miss 2 games now, that's better than 4 games later. And so Robinson looks like he'll be back. Andrew Wiley, I think, was very close to going. He actually dressed on Sunday and was available in case of emergency. So I think with a couple extra days, he'll be back at right tackle. Trying to think who else was on the injury report. Lattimore is, I guess, the other big one. Looks like he's not going to play. And then, their kicker situation is kind of weird at the moment too. Austin Seibert didn't kick last weekend. Zane Gonzalez did and was fine. So they're on a backup kicker, but like last week that was okay. And those are the big ones. I guess the other one just to watch out for, which may or may not matter, is Cornelius Lucas, their swing tackle, who, again, if their starting right tackle is out, he'd be the backup. They've also used him on some level of rotation at left tackle with Brandon Coleman this year. Coleman's been the full-time starter for the last 2 weeks as Lucas has been out. So could they go back to that rotation potentially, or is just Lucas there in general in case of emergency? So he's the other big one that didn't play last Sunday that is back in practice and could return this week.
Okay, there you go. Official report from Craig Hoffman. We appreciate that.
As official as that gets.
As official as it gets, as of, and again, this will be a little bit delayed for people watching it back, but still, we'll keep an eye on that with some of those official. You went through a lot of different matchups to look at here. Is there one that you can pinpoint that you're really looking forward to watching? You maybe the Terry McLaurin and Quinyon Mitchell one, but is that the big one to be focusing on?
To me, that's the most intriguing one because Terry is the guy that can completely change the game for Washington with big plays. Like, they've got other guys who have been pretty good. Like Noah Brown's been a good 2 for them this year. De'Ami Brown had a terrible game on Sunday, but like he's been a good screen runner for them this year. Like, so there's some ancillary pieces. Austin Eckler has had some explosives this year, but I think Terry's the guy who is just having a career year. Like he's been every single year he's been in Washington. He's been either 1,000-yard receiver or like there's 1 year where I think he had like 970 yards or something like that. And he got hurt and missed the last 2 games. It might even been his rookie year. And he's been doing that with the quarterbacks that are in Washington. Like trying to tell me that dude's not a top 10 receiver. that production with these quarterbacks. Now all of a sudden he's got Jayden Daniels and he's third in the league in receiving. He is having an outstanding season and he's scoring touchdowns. Like he's been a factor in the red zone, factor in the middle of the field. His route tree isn't the most complex. Like in some ways it's similar to AJ Brown. AJ is a better player, not to get it twisted, but like you don't give AJ Brown the entire route tree necessarily. You say you have go, you have comeback, you have slant. And those are the three that you can just absolutely crush people on. And because if you jump the comeback, you're gone. You sit too much on the curl, you're outside too much, you get that slant, and then he's hard to tackle. And, so if you sit too much on the go, then you got the comeback and it's free yardage. And so those three routes work really well off each other. And they've done a good job of isolating Terry in those situations. And he's going to basically line up on the outside on the left. That's where Quinyon has lined up 97% of the time this year, the defensive right. And let's party. Like, let's go. Let's see who can win that matchup. And so I think that's really interesting. And then on the other side, like, what do they do with AJ Brown? Like, are they just going to double him the entire game? I would not trust any of Washington's corners on him. Mm-hmm. AJ is a top 5 bona fide blue chip player. He is big. He is strong. He is quick. He does run good routes, even if it's not like, routing people up like Devonta is. He still runs really good routes. And so that dude just scares the daylights out of me. And making sure that you have extra bodies around him at all time. And whether that's a safety over the top, a linebacker kind of in that middle in case he does run a slant. Like I want Bobby Wagner or Frankie Louvu looming to try to tackle him. That way I don't have one of these corners trying to ankle tackle him after he breaks him off on a slant. So I think just getting bodies, if this is a team game, Washington has a really good chance. If this becomes a bunch of one-on-one individual matchups, those matchups favor Philadelphia.
Okay, well, that's what I mean. I'm personally what I hope to see is Emmanuel Forbes, AJ Brown 2.0. Like let's just get or maybe 3.0, whatever. But I understand that we will not. But I love the fact that he tweeted out, and I mean, I do a lot of like trolling and everything else, but whenever AJ Brown handed him the football in the matchup last year, I termed it as AJ gave him his welcome to the NFL moment. And that was, him tears on the sideline, everything else. So maybe it won't be Emmanuel Forbes, but I would gladly sign up for one-on-one.
I mean, he's a huge part of their problems. Like the fact that he's not good is why Benjamin St. Juste is having to guard all these number 1 guys and why they had to trade for Marshawn Lattimore and all that. Like, he is. It's not good. It's not good. The Ron Rivera era was not fruitful, to say the least.
No, I can't imagine that. That's crazy. Why would that be? I was going to ask, but you've said it so many times here. I think I could just guess on this one. But who would be the one player for the Commanders that you would say has a lot to perform well? We've hit on obviously Scary Terry long enough. I feel like that's your guy. You're predicting a big game from him. Do you have any exact numbers? Or maybe not exact, but just rough ballpark. Like, what are we talking about? You think Terry's game is?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they need to continue to get him involved more. Like that's the thing is he's not been a high volume guy. So if you can get him like 7 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown, like that's like the right amount for him. He's not a Justin Jefferson. Like let's get him 17 targets. I've always wondered what would happen if they tried. I would love to spam Terry McLaurin, although I don't know that doing it against Quinyon Mitchell is the right matchup. Like Kenyon's really good. He's really, really good. And he's got length, he's got strength, he's got speed. Like I'm highlighting that matchup because I think it's important, not because I'm in any way guaranteeing that Terry's going to win it as much as I love Terry McLaurin. So I think I just want to make that like clear. I think the other guy that I would watch is Brian Robinson. Their success rate in games that Brian Robinson plays would put them as the number 1 rushing team in the NFL. They're like in the mid-20s without him. That's how important that dude is. Jeez. And you watched how Pittsburgh played Jayden as a runner last week. They were like, please, on zone read, hand the ball off. They just ran straight at Jayden Daniels. And we're like, you will hand this ball off. I don't care whether this is a token fake or a real potential zone read, you are handing the ball off. And it's a lot easier to do when he's handing it off to Austin Eckler and Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez versus Brian Robinson, who's averaging nearly 5 yards a carry on the season. So B-Rob is the one that I think is actually really, really important to watch. So he first, is he going to play? Second, is he actually Brian Robinson? And if he is, now the Commanders are in business. If not, it's going to be a lot harder slog.
Okay. Well, it's hurt my fantasy team the last couple of weeks where it's like, oh, he may play and then he doesn't play. So, we're
I apparently forgot to sub him last week.
Good.
I got the news while I was hosting a live radio show. Thought I subbed him. Did not.
It's
Did
the
not. I was too
difficulty
busy
of the
doing
game
my
time
job.
decision with the questionable and getting the comment from the player of like, oh, probably gonna play or feels like he will. So yeah, I had the same issue. But Philly, they've had some issues. There's been some leaky run defense. If we look at Fangio, hey, has completely right the ship, turned this thing around. Dallas, even last week, the very, very limited offense that they did have, the success was running the football occasionally. So okay, I like it. To end here, always do score predictions for guests and everything on that side. So I personally am feeling like this thing could get, will be close, but I think it could be a little bit of a higher scoring naturally with the offenses that both teams have. So for me, I'm going to say 31-28. That's the score that I'm going to go with. But what would you say? Score predictions.
Yeah, I was thinking about that one, so I'll do slightly differently. I was thinking like a 1A, 1B, and it's 31-28 or 27-24. So kind of in that same range. Philly by 3. I will say I don't like if you're not a late stayer-upper that all of a sudden is like, oh man, this game, these two teams are top 4 in the league in rush attempts. There's a chance this game starts at 8:15 and ends by 11:30. So it might be a limited number of possessions in this game. So that is also something that obviously affects the score. So I think 27-24, somewhere in there. Philly gets it. Tough, hard-fought game. These two teams are both really good. And that's ultimately like what I hope to still feel by the time Friday morning rolls around is like, yeah, okay, that's one of the best teams in the league, and maybe Washington lost, but like they're right there. And when Philly comes here, it'll be a heck of a game, and maybe it'll go the other way. So gonna be fun. Thursday Night Football is always wacky. Last week was one of the all-timers. Let's see what we can do this week.
Was it ever? Yeah, if you have a kind of a repeat from that, good gosh. But no, it will be fun. And I'm going to be at the game, so it's going to be a blast. Should be enjoyable.
Well, then it's guaranteed a good time.
Yeah, and then just got to get the win. So the last couple have been good. Hopefully keep those vibes. But Craig, I appreciate you, man. You're an incredible wealth of knowledge. Quick little shout out to people who don't realize or know this, but I actually interned for Craig. So all success and everything else definitely goes to you for all the support and help and info and everything because I was absolutely not knowing at all what I was doing before, and I still don't really, but it's more so along those lines. So appreciate you, man.
Look at you now. You're welcome, America.
I love that. But on a serious note, I should say, please make sure to sub to Craig's channel. It's Craig Hoffman on YouTube. Also, Twitter, you're definitely missing out if you're not following Craig. It's at Craig Hoffman, as well as Take Command Podcast, as you said, with Logan Paulson. So make sure to hit all those. I've got links in the description, too, if you guys want to go check it out. And also, let us know your score predictions, thoughts of the game, who's going to win the matchup. Is it Scary Terry or Quinyon Mitchell? Let us know. Craig, I appreciate it, man.
Josh, it was great doing this, man. So happy for your success. Really appreciate it. See you.
Awesome. Go Birds.